Greetings, this is Alexandra. Welcome to Alexandra ESL. Today is a very special day. It's Easter, April 5th, 2026. And today I want to share something very personal with you. There is a verse that says, "Every good and perfect gift is from above." And I truly believe that some people in our lives are exactly like that, a gift. This video is one of those gifts. What you're about to watch is a series of interviews with my mentor, my teacher, my friend, a person who shaped my personality, my values, and influenced my life in a very deep way. I recorded this interview in 2023, 1 year after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. At that time, my life was completely turned upside down, just like the lives of millions of Ukrainians. And maybe to understand me a little bit better, I want you to ask yourself one question. If you had to leave your home and you didn't know if you would ever come back or when you would come back, what would you take with you? Just take a moment and imagine that. Because in moments like that, you understand something very clearly. Life is very short. It's like a blink of an eye. And for me, that moment clarified a lot of things. One of which is that my calling is definitely teaching. But not just teaching language. English or Ukrainian, it's understanding people and it's connecting cultures. As a Ukrainian, I feel like I've become a bridge. The bridge between Ukraine and the world, between cultures and between ways of thinking. And through this channel, my goal is to explore, to learn from, and to share with you the wisdom of the best teachers and mentors that I've met throughout my life. Jeff Stevens is one of those people. He has spent decades in education as a teacher, counselor, mentor, but more importantly, he is someone who builds people. And in this 11-part series, we will explore what it really means to be a teacher, what challenges teachers face, what shapes them, and what truly matters in the end. And in part 1, we begin with something very simple. As Jeff said, they planted seeds. So the question is, where does a teacher actually begin? Let's get started. People don't just wake up and all of a sudden they think, oh, I'm a teacher. Like there is a story of every teacher, and I'm trying to understand how to become a better one.
I'll do my best. Okay, my teaching story actually started when I was in elementary school and high school, middle school, high school. Along the way of my public education, I had a couple teachers. I had at least 2 teachers who really seemed to connect with me. And over the course of the school year that I spent with those 2 teachers, they planted seeds in my mind, and not by anything they said directly to me. It was more by who they were as people and the way they presented their material and the way they conducted themselves in the classroom, and the way they taught, the style of teaching they had, that began to plant seeds in my mind, at least, because I was looking at a future, thinking about careers, and especially in high school, because the high school I went to every year would have a career day or a career week, and the school was trying to encourage all the students to think about a career and chart a pathway for the future. So, those kind of ideas were floating around in my mind, and especially my junior year, I had an English teacher that I thought was, at least in my mind, she inspired me, I guess is the best way to put it. I saw her, and this is a lady who was older at the time, and she had a handicap, in terms of walking. I think she may have had one leg that was a little shorter than the other, so she had a limp. And yet she was an outstanding teacher, and I felt like she really taught in a very personal way, a very relational way. She was very kind. She wasn't loud. She was soft-spoken, but she knew her content, and I thought that I was a pretty avid reader, so I had done a lot of reading as a child. And she taught literature, and she taught grammar, and she taught writing, and all of those things seemed to. She seemed to model quality about herself, where she understood all those things, and as I would turn in written work, she would comment on what I wrote, and I think it was through all those interactions, just as a student in the class, not because she took any special attention away from others and gave it to me. She just communicated in her normal teaching style, and that seemed to resonate with me. That I would probably point to her as my most influential early education experience. Point to her as sparking, at least planting seeds of teaching. I can remember sitting in class a few times thinking, well, maybe I could be a teacher. Maybe I could be a teacher. Just asking that question. You know, when I thought about careers, I was thinking, maybe teaching might. Although when it came to going to a formal program on career day, I chose to go to 2 or 3 speakers that spoke on things like becoming a forester, working out in nature, and I began to realize that that wasn't too realistic, because they started talking about things like how much of a science education you had, and science was not one of my big interests, and neither was it a big skill set for me. So that's all part of the process of formulating in your mind what kind of career you want to have for the future. And so I was reflecting on, well, science isn't really a strength of mine, but I think that I might have some interest and some ability in reading and writing and the English language. I like the English language, and so, believe it or not, and I was probably one of the strange ones, but I really was challenged by grammar even. So I liked words. I liked how words were formed into sentences. So when we studied grammar, I really paid attention to that. It was something that I was interested in. And I thought, well, maybe that might have a possibility. I didn't know, but then when I left high school, I went to a 3-year private school. It was a Bible college, and they did not have at that time. Since then, they've become a university, but at that time, they had a diploma after 3 years, but not a degree, not a bachelor's degree, not a bachelor of science or a bachelor of arts. So I went there for 3 years, and they asked, although we didn't have to, but they asked if students wanted to have an associated major. Bible was the major subject, they had several other options, and I chose education as my secondary program. So during that time, I took several courses in education. It was called Christian education, but it was still education, and my eyes were kind of open to different educational principles and different educational philosophies and the whole world of learning and students and teaching and strategies. And so it was kind of in my experience, I don't know if this was the purpose of the professors or not, but in my mind, it was an exploration of teaching. I became aware of some of the training that was required and some of the important skills and that sort of thing, some of the philosophy behind education. So it was a good 3 years of exposure, in a light duty way, not a heavy way. It wasn't my major concentration, but I was exposed to that. And then when I left that school after 3 years, I graduated from there, and I had the opportunity to transfer to another college that did provide a degree, a bachelor's degree program. They had quite a range of opportunities in bachelor degrees, but what I discovered is that in transferring to that college, that they would transfer most of my credits from my previous school if I were to major in certain things, and one of the categories was English. If I majored in English, then they would transfer most of my credits, and so it would shorten the length of time that it would take me to get a degree if I did that. So that's in a practical way, but I think it's those kind of little steps that every person deals with, and that it was an opportunity for me to get a degree in an area that I was interested in, and I could transfer most of my credits. So that made a difference for me at that time. I was newly married at the time, and I was working a part-time job, and it was important for me to try to be as efficient as possible with the income, so that I didn't waste time or waste money by taking courses that I didn't need to take. So it was just a very efficient decision, and I was actually interested in English at the time. I had been all since that junior year of 11th grade in high school. Those seeds were beginning to grow in all kinds of different little ways of things I would read or people I would talk to. So slowly over time, that desire to teach, I think, was percolating in my brain, you might say.
So here is what I'm taking from this. A teacher doesn't begin with a decision. It begins much earlier than that. As Jeff said, seeds were planted, not through instruction, but through example. And I think that's very powerful, because it means that right now you might already be becoming someone without even realizing it. So maybe the question is, what has already started growing inside of me?